Resident Evil's world is filled with terrifying giants born from viral experiments gone wrong, monsters that reshape the landscape of horror and bioweapon warfare. From the very beginning, these colossal creatures tested the courage and resourcefulness of iconic heroes, pushing survival to its limits. Let's rewind to one of the earliest and most sneaky threats lurking in the shadows, a twisted experiment that turned a simple creature into a deadly mansion guardian. Yawn. You don't expect to get stopped by a giant mutant snake inside a creepy old mansion. But that's exactly what Yawn is, one of Umbrella's earliest bioorganic weapons, bred from a simple snake infected with the IT virus in the Arklay laboratory. Designed as a sort of environmental security, Yawn wasn't just a beast, it was a living door block. Players first face it lurking in tight mansion corridors, forcing Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine to manage scarce ammo and escape routes carefully. Before you roll your eyes at a snake boss, hear me out. Yawn wasn't just there for show. As a prototype for more terrifying weapons, it tested how these creatures could be integrated into the mansion itself as living obstacles in the early survival horror setup. It's big, slow, and its mouth yawns wide before lunging, hence the name, which sounds more sleepy than deadly, but definitely isn't. Yawn's biggest weakness? It thrives in cramped quarters but struggles against ranged acid rounds. If you can hit it from afar, it's manageable. This vulnerability underscores Umbrella's experimental approach at the time. Reckless, casual, and a bit slapdash with their weaponized monsters. They were more interested in seeing what worked and what broke rather than building the perfect killing machine yet. So Yawn stands as the foundation of the mansion's monster horrors, big enough to be intimidating but still a clear step before Umbrella's subsequent escalation to more deadly creations. If you think a giant snake blocking a hallway is scary, wait until you meet Tyrant T002, the laboratory's so-called ultimate life form. Tyrant. T002 to Tyrant T0 Bio is the grim poster child of Umbrella's early bioweapon ambitions, the very first successful humanoid tyrant prototype created deep within the Arklay laboratory. This towering brute wasn't just muscle, it was Umbrella's attempt to build the ultimate life form, a weapon combining overwhelming strength with just enough intelligence to be remotely controlled. But here's the twist. It walks around with its heart fully exposed on its chest. That glaring weakness is both a practical Achilles' heel and a bold sign of Umbrella's hubris, daring anyone close enough to exploit it. When players face Tyrant T02 in the mansion incident climax, it's the ultimate boss showdown. Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine battle this relentless behemoth in a tense fight where raw power clashes with desperate strategy. And yes, the legendary rocket launcher moment blasting the exposed heart has become a defining symbol of Resident Evil's high-stakes monster fights. The Tyrant isn't just a mindless brute, it shows limited intelligence, able to track and aggressively pursue its prey, hinting at the battlefield adaptability perfected later by the mass-produced T103 Tyrants. But here's the kicker. Despite its crushing presence, the exposed heart means Tyrant isn't unstoppable. Umbrella designed a fail-safe kill switch right into their ultimate life form. It's both a safety net and a glaring design flaw, showing how their creations teeter on the edge of disaster. That overconfidence fuels the tension in the final fight. The giant dominates, but a well-placed shot to the heart brings it all crashing down. Narratively, Tyrant T02 sets the stakes for everything after, embodying Umbrella's peak viral ambition and reckless edge. It proves humanoid tyrants are possible, paving the way for the terrifying bioorganic wave that floods Raccoon City. If you think Tyrant's a one-off freak, wait till you meet the mutated scientist who pushes viral evolution to terrifying new limits. William Birkin G-Phase. William Birkin is the tragic face of scientific hubris in Resident Evil, a brilliant Umbrella scientist who gambled with his own life by injecting himself with the experimental G-Virus. Unlike the more controlled T-Virus, this mutant virus drives runaway evolution within the host's body, triggering a horrifying cascade of transformations that push Birkin from man to monster. The results are gruesome, unpredictable, and deadly. The G-Virus doesn't just create one mutation, it triggers a sequence of monstrous forms, known as G1 through G5, each one more grotesque and dangerous than the last. Early on, Birkin's mutated body still holds faint traces of humanity, recognizable limbs, facial features, and vulnerable weak points like oversized, bulging eyes or exposed organs. The game cleverly exploits this. They're your target to slow down the creature's progress, but as Birkin advances to later stages, all traces of his mortal self are lost. The G4 form abandons the classic bipedal stance in favor of a quadrupedal, bestial frame and by his final G5 form, he's degraded even further into a lumbering, amorphous mass piled with tentacles and jaw-like appendages. You're facing a bioengineered nightmare, pure primordial rage, driven by a virus that doesn't just mutate, it evolves uncontrollably. Birkin is central to the Raccoon City outbreak, becoming the undead embodiment of Umbrella's catastrophic failures. He's not just a mindless bow, he's a tragic villain, a father whose obsession with his creation dooms his family and the entire city. Fighting Birkin isn't a simple boss battle. It's a battle of adaptation where your weapons and tactics have to evolve as he morphs, forcing you to stay one step ahead through multiple phases, each with different attack patterns and weaknesses. Mechanically, Birkin's earlier forms reward precision shooting to exposed weak points, but later the fight shifts into a high-pressure endurance test. No single weak spot, just raw durability that demands sustained fire and smart positioning. This contrasts sharply with controlled tyrants like the T-02, highlighting the J-Virus's shift from engineered bioweapon to uncontrollable force of nature. Birkin's story shows the dark underbelly of bioweapon escalation. The progression from tyrants to G-forms marks a turning point where Umbrella goes beyond neat, manageable monsters into unpredictable viral evolution, monsters that can't be controlled, only survived. It's corporate betrayal and mad science fused into flesh. And if you think a morphing mad scientist is bad, wait until you meet the relentless Nemesis T-Type. Next, Nemesis T-Type. Nemesis isn't just another tyrant variant. It's Umbrella Europe's brutal answer to a huge problem. How do you make a bioorganic weapon not just strong, but smart and adaptable? The solution? Slap an NE alpha parasite inside a T-103 tyrant host, resulting in a horrifying hybrid with enhanced intelligence and a terrifying mission focus. Hunt down Jill Valentine relentlessly through the streets of Raccoon City. Before you brush this off as just another monster chase, hear me out. Nemesis isn't your typical mindless biological brute. The parasite upgrades its cognition and autonomy, allowing it to strategically wield multiple weapons and change tactics on the fly. This isn't just raw strength, it's a calculated predator. Unlike earlier tyrants that stumble forward blindly, Nemesis stalks you like a ruthless hunter that learns from every encounter. Its mutation phases only ramp things up. Starting as a grotesquely restrained humanoid with a massive right arm, Nemesis morphs through terrifying forms, covered in tentacles and extra limbs, turning into an almost alien abomination. Each transformation increases its lethality and allows more brutal attacks, combining raw power with rapid adaptability. The city streets become a terrifying maze of tension as you dodge ambushes and juggle survival, always a step behind a monster designed to hunt you specifically. But here's where it gets really interesting and complicated. Nemesis doesn't have a clear single weak point like some earlier tyrants with exposed hearts. Instead, its parasitic core is hidden and protected, meaning you have to exploit its biology on a deeper level. Shoot the tentacles, dodge the weapons, and attack the parasite when it finally shows itself. It rewards knowledge and tactical patience, not just brute force. Nemesis also marks Umbrella Europe's turn toward semi-autonomous BOWs that escalate bioterror from secret labs to actual urban warfare. The chaos unleashed in Raccoon City isn't just viral, it's a calculated bioweapon deployment designed to eliminate threats with surgical precision while sowing mass panic. Fans remember Nemesis for one thing, being that terrifying, unkillable hunter who just won't quit. His repeated ambushes build a suspenseful cat-and-mouse game that turns every street corner into a nightmare. So if you thought that was intense, hold on tight, because the next creature we're diving into is even bigger and meaner. Del Lago. Del Lago is Resident Evil 4's iconic nightmare amphibian, a massive, plaga-infected mutant that turns a peaceful lake in Valdolobos into a watery death trap. Unlike other monsters you face on foot, Del Lago's threat comes from the environment itself. You're trapped on a small boat, armed with only a handful of harpoons, dragged helplessly across the water by this towering predator. Before you dismiss it as just a big frog, hear me out. Del Lago isn't simply a giant monster. It's a perfect example of parasite bioweaponry extending beyond humans into natural ecosystems. The Plaga parasite that controls it integrates so deeply that this lake becomes its hunting ground, and Del Lago the apex aquatic predator, ruling the water with lethal efficiency. This is ecological terrorism, Resident Evil style. The encounter forces a unique gameplay style focused on environmental tension rather than direct firefights. You're dodging the monster's terrifying surfacing attacks, debris it hurls at your fragile boat, and frantic moments where it dives under to drag you down. Your limited harpoons aren't just damage tools, they're your lifeline. Each throw a desperate gamble to stop Del Lago's relentless pull. Success means wearing it down enough to snap its grasp and eventually force it into retreat. Mechanically, Del Lago's weakness lies in those harpoon strikes and your ability to endure the brutal tug of war. Repeated hits slow its momentum, making it easier to dodge and counterattack. It doesn't have a conveniently exposed heart like other bows, but the sustained persistence damage combined with strategic timing is what breaks this amphibian's dominance. Here's where it gets really interesting. Del Lago shows how bioweapon tech has mutated the natural world itself, weaponizing ecosystems to act as battlefield zones. It's not just humans turn monsters. Nature can be corrupted into an extension of terror, making every splash in the water a potential death sentence. At least Del Lago is confined to a lake. Next, Leon heads back onto dry land to face a monster that trades water for pure, crushing muscle, El Gigante. El Gigante is proof that horror doesn't need fancy labs or massive corporations to be terrifying. It can grow right out of a sleepy rural village. This gigantic monster started as a normal human, but was transformed by the Plaga parasite, developed by the Los Illuminados cult in Resident Evil 4, into a towering colossus with raw strength enough to crush anything in its way. Before you roll your eyes at giant monsters being cliché, hear me out. El Gigante isn't just muscle and rage, it's a brutal fusion of human size and parasitic control. The Plaga parasite causes extreme hypertrophy, making the host monstrously large and disturbingly resilient. But here's the kicker. The parasite literally bursts out of the creature's back during the fight, revealing a vulnerable core Leon must target to bring it down. Leon battles El Gigante in vast outdoor arenas that highlight the savage struggle between hunter and beast. Without cramped corridors to hide in, Leon relies on ranged weapons, quick thinking, and the environment itself. The monster's slow but devastating stomps, grabs, and throws keep you alert. One mistake means death. What makes El Gigante stand out in the Resident Evil bioweapon lineup is how it adds parasitic domination to viral mutations. It's not just a lab experiment, it's a living weapon grown in a cult's twisted backyard, showing how infection no longer stays contained to labs or secret facilities. That contrast, rural nightmare versus sterile lab horror, makes El Gigante feel both familiar and alien, its brute force bound to a fragile parasite, daring you to exploit its weakness. If you thought monsters like Tyrant or Nemesis were Resident Evil's peak terror, El Gigante proves there's a different kind of monstrous out in the wilderness. But if this giant seems bad, wait until you hear about the aquatic nightmare swarming an entire cruise ship. Next up, Malacoda. Malacoda is one of Resident Evil's most unsettling aquatic monstrosities, a massive parasitic worm swarm infected by the T-Abyss virus, designed as a horrifying bioweapon for underwater terror. But before you picture a single huge creature, hear me out. Malacoda is actually a writhing mass of parasitic worms fused together inside a gigantic host organism. It's not just about size, it's about scale and ecological nightmare. The T-Abyss virus, created by Umbrella and later used by the terrorist group Il Veltro, specializes in underwater environments. Malacoda weaponizes naturally parasitic worms that usually infect fish, turning them into an aggressive swarm. This infection twists both parasites and host, creating a living horror lurking beneath the seas around the Queen Zenobia cruise ship. During Resident Evil Revelations, Malacoda attacks BSAA agents like Chris Redfield as they attempt to board or evacuate the Queen Zenobia. The swarm erupts from the water, forcing agents to fend off endless worm clusters while dodging attacks from the massive host hiding beneath the waves. The fight isn't a slugfest. It's a complex challenge requiring players to target multiple worm segments emerging from the host's body while avoiding slam and projectile attacks. A relentless, multi-target nightmare demanding precise timing and positioning. Beating Malacoda means destroying visible worm clusters with rocket launchers and heavy fire, then landing a missile strike deep into the host's mouth once it's vulnerable. This two-phase fight keeps tension high, battling both a parasite swarm and a gigantic corrupted organism simultaneously. It's a fresh twist on Resident Evil's boss formula. Malacoda's design marks a leap in bioweapon evolution, extending the T-Abyss virus's parasitic threat from land to water, turning ecosystems into weapons. The virus's power to mutate aquatic parasites en masse hints at ecological disaster far beyond isolated outbreaks. One infected waterway could spawn these horrors. Imagine open ocean scale. Compared to earlier monsters, Malakota is less about brute humanoid strength and more about overwhelming parasitic infestation, pushing bioweapons into aquatic ecological warfare. Its defeat is both a tactical victory and a symbol of resistance against the rising tide of Aetiobius aquatic terror. But if you think parasitic worm armies are bad, wait until you see the Ultimate Abyss, T-Abyss's next viral evolution, Ultimate Abyss. Jack Norman's transformation into the Ultimate Abyss is Resident Evil, Revelation's answer to the ultimate bioweapon showdown, both punishing and mentally disorienting. Norman, leader of the terrorist group Ilveltro, overdoses on the T-Abyss virus, triggering a monstrous mutation that fuses fanaticism with viral power. You're not just fighting a monster, but a walking symbol of extremism, spiraling wildly out of control. Before you dismiss it as a standard giant boss fight, hear me out. The Ultimate Abyss battle is layered with complexity. Norman's transformation is unstable, filled with hallucinations that turn targeting into a brutal pattern recognition challenge. He teleports around the arena while spawning illusory clones. These duplicates look almost identical, but only one. The one with purple smoke from its mouth is real. Attack the fakes, and you waste ammo, wait too long, and devastating attacks demand split-second dodges. On top of that trickery, Ultimate Abyss has multiple weak points to exploit carefully. His exposed heart appears during specific attacks, and is your primary damage focus. But here's the kicker. Sometimes his back literally opens like a grotesque aperture. This ultra-weak spot is even more vulnerable, but only when Norman curls up after charging. Missing these tells drags the fight out painfully. There's also a critical moment when Norman falls, letting you charge a powerful attack that deals massive damage without ammo. Nailing the timing is key. This multi-phase fight tests endurance and observation, far from the simple aim and shoot bosses of earlier Resident Evil games. Health items are scarce, and the arena offers green herbs you'll need to grab strategically. You balance aggression with caution while filtering real Norman from illusions amid a haze of teleporting horrors. Narratively, the Ultimate Abyss represents both Norman's downfall and Ilveltro's ideological madness. His form shows what happens when bioweapons meet fanaticism, an uncontrollable force no one can contain. It's a brutal reminder. Viral monstrosity combined with radical extremism results in unpredictable, deeply dangerous chaos. If you think it's just a numbers game, think again. This fight is a psychological puzzle and a narrative climax. Norman's Ultimate Abyss perfectly merges viral horror with ideological madness, a fitting finale before the series dives into the Megamycete fungal nightmare. Megamycete. The Megamycete isn't just another monster, it's a full-on fungal hive mind with the power to rewrite what we understand about life and death in Resident Evil. At the core of the mold genus, this colossal fungal mass stores genetic memories and consciousness, making it way more than just a creepy spore factory. It's basically a living database where identities get preserved, even resurrected. Before you think it's just sci-fi weirdness, this hive mind is dead serious. It's the backbone of the Twisted experiments run by Mother Miranda's village in Resident Evil Village, creating bioweapons that don't just mutate flesh, but wrestle with souls. Mother Miranda's obsession with resurrection ties directly into the Megamycete's ability to save and replicate memories, even letting her puppeteer her 4 monstrous lords like their nodes on her fungal network. These lords aren't just brutal bosses. They embody the hive mind's flagship agents, blurring the boundary between who's alive, who's dead, and who's just borrowed time from the fungal root. It's the franchise's biggest existential horror punch. What happens when your very sense of self becomes hostage to a mind that refuses to die? Autonomy becomes a joke, replaced by collective control under a monstrous fungal intelligence. Forget mutations. This is mind control amplified to an unbearable, metaphysical degree. Ethan Winters' final showdown with the Megamycete drives this home. To stop the Black God fungus, he destroys its root network, cutting off the hive mind's ability to resurrect and control. It's a brutal sacrifice that literally cuts off the head of this unseen beast, ending Miranda's twisted dream and Ethan's forced half-life. The fight isn't just a boss battle. It's a symbolic rupture of identity and memory chains that the mold had woven through the village and beyond. Here's the thing. The Megamycete pushes Resident Evil's horror from the physical to the philosophical. It takes the franchise's bioweapons concept and evolves it into a cosmic horror-level threat, a collective intelligence capable of storing, resurrecting, and controlling multiple human identities at once. It's a hive mind that doesn't just spread infection, but erases the line between life and death, turning memories into prison cells. This escalation cements the Megamycete as the ultimate fate of Umbrella's legacy and the Connection's failed ambitions. Where bioorganic horror becomes metaphysical dread, it's a big leap from Tyrants and Nemesis. The nightmare here isn't just getting ripped apart, it's losing who you even are. Not all Resident Evil monsters are giant and scary. Some are fundamentally unsettling because they threaten the core of what makes us human. The Megamycete is exactly that. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.